Ambassador Gordan Bakota. First of all, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us at the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy here in Berlin. Today we'd like to ask you a series of questions in order to hear your thoughts and your understandings and opinions on some salient issues that are currently keeping the world busy. So the first question is regarding Ukraine, and we're wondering what your opinion was on the current. Do you see the current situation as a war between the West and with Russia? Or what is your advice, for example, to the heads of Western countries or to the president of Ukraine itself?
Yes, many thanks for this very important question. I think it's quite obvious that this is not Russia against West or Russia against NATO, for example. We are facing aggression from Russia's side in Ukraine, and we have to clearly voice this and mention that we have to keep on being unified. We have to show unity, the Western side, EU and NATO, because it's quite obvious that we are standing before a very important turning point. Secondly, I think that we have to show resilience, and in terms of sanctions which we are undertaking against Russia, we have to show our commitment. So it's not easy under the current situation in Europe, but on the other side we do not have any option. The situation reminds me a lot on the situation in the Western Balkans, in the region of Southeastern Europe, in the neighborhood of Croatia, when we faced the war in the 90s. Simply there are a lot of similarities between what is happening nowadays with so-called Russian road and everything what is now still some sides in our neighborhood, like Serbia is undertaking in the region, like the Serbian road. So in this regard, we got to have a very strong commitment. We have to show our resistance. We have to keep on going, and definitely we have to understand that this position is not only regarding Ukraine. By defending Ukraine, we are defending our Western values. It's about democracy against autocracy. It's about the values of the Western societies. And this is at stake. This is quite important. Secondly, my country is very much engaged in many issues regarding Ukraine, not only sanctions, but also bilateral support in terms of experience from the war and aggression on Croatia in the 90s, when we managed to make a very successful UN mission by ending the war and integrating Eastern Slavonia, part of Croatia which was occupied. So this is a kind of a very good example. It could be a very good example for Ukraine, and we are offering our support when it comes to the integration of Crimea and Donbass in the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So we offer this on the bilateral level, but additionally, my country, Croatia, is going to organize by the end of October, together with the Ukrainian side, a very important conference. It's called so-called Crimea platform. So Croatia is taking a lead in this process in order to show that we got to show commitment, and there will be a big conference in Zagreb with many participants, all of the NATO countries, all of the EU countries, which have to show solidarity to the Ukrainian people. So we have to keep on being committed. We have to be very much persistent in this issue and resilient. There are a lot of open issues also, but the Western side needs to be homogeneous in this very important situation.
Perfect, thank you so much for your insight. I'll pass over now to my colleague Natalie for the next question.
The next question is regarding the European Union. So since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the following developments since then, the EU countries, including Germany, have built vast dependency on energy resources from Russia. This process was accelerated during the time of President Putin, despite the signals and signs that came from Russia with regards to respect to human rights and hostility towards the West. Despite those signs, the Western countries did not change this dependency, and suddenly in February, and without any plan, have achieved the extreme deterioration of the relations, which have not been worse since the Cold War. The EU countries are currently vulnerable and in danger. What, in your opinion, was done wrong in the last 2 decades regarding this issue? And What is your opinion on the mistake of the strategy in maintaining relations with Russia? And what went wrong and what should we do now to prepare for the days after the Ukraine war?
I think it was quite obvious from this infamous, I could say, speech from Mr. Putin in Munich, and then through Georgia, and then, of course, the occupation of Crimea, Donbass a few years ago, that Putin was very adamant and serious in his endeavors. I think it was quite obvious that we should be very serious when it comes to Russian plans. It was quite important to listen also to countries from the Eastern Europe, like Baltic states and like Poland, was mentioned by Ursula von der Leyen, and the other day, and also to see that the EU needs to react together, and we have to invest more into defense. It's obvious in Germany that this was not enough. So 2% of in allocating GDP for defense was quite important. And when it comes to the energy issues, I think it's quite obvious that this kind of dependency from the European side, some of the countries, to the Russian energy was totally dangerous. Croatia is very much advocating to diversify our energy supply, our energy sources. We set up LNG on the island Krk. We will enhance the capacity of LNG, and we'll make this. We made it not only for our own purpose, but also for the countries in Southeastern Europe and in Central Europe, including Germany. The German side have interest now to develop and to diversify energy supply by cooperating with Croatia. We have a very long coast and a lot of potential to support our friends, our neighbors, in order to have diverse situation. Eventually, the process of implementing European constitutions, European agreements, is quite a demanding one, but on the certain issues we have to put a lot of efforts to try to make homogeneous and coherent our energy policy. So far we have different situations between different countries. My personal opinion is that on the long run we have to do everything in order to see intra-European cooperation. There are a lot of powerful tools which are provided to the European countries, like re-energize Europe, etc., in order to see that our independence in the energy field is a real one.
Thank you very much. So now moving on to the topic of China. The tension between China and the West is growing and becoming more and more visible to most of the world right now. And we're just wondering what the position of Croatia was on this issue, and how do you think the international community, for example, can resolve this issue?
Definitely, probably, if not the same importance in regard of the question whether Russia or China are now in focus, I could say that China is definitely a very important issue for the Western side. It's a very tempting one. On one side, we have to cooperate with China because the chains of the supply are basically not. It's impossible to break it or to dismantle those chains over the night. On the other side, politically, we have to voice a very strong message that Taiwan is definitely something which should not happen, and we should react if Taiwan would be attacked. This is a kind of a red line. On the other side, my country, Croatia, has built a very important bridge to connect the two sides of Croatia along the seaside in order to make two sides of the European Union together, because there was a small part of Croatian soil being interrupted by the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In order to avoid it, we built up the breach Pelješac. It was done by the Chinese side based on all kind of necessary procurements done by Brussels, financed by Brussels, etc. This is the only investment of China in Croatia, and I think that we should know where do we belong. And we belong to the Western values, we belong to the Western side, European Union and NATO. Values, there is no compromise, there are no compromising solutions when it comes to the values. This is quite important to say. Democracy is the core pivotal issue for all of our countries, and it's about the relationship between democracy and autocracy. This is quite important. If we do understand this kind of refined bottom line between those two issues, we will be on the right side. So it's a complicated issue on the global scale. It's quite important to see whether we could cooperate with China on the multilateral level. It means also in the United Nations. China plays, of course, extremely very important role. There are, even though this situation is, from my point of view, regarding Russia, is quite uncomfortable for them. So this is this refined diplomacy from our side to understand that it's a strategical challenge for us, to understand globally what will be the meaning of our cooperation in the context of the new situation with Russia, and on the other side to see whether when we are making business and cooperating with Russia, we should not forget the dimension of human rights. This is quite important because, again, I will repeat it, it's about our values.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And the last question then, about cultural diplomacy in Croatia. How important is cultural diplomacy in your opinion? And please give us a few examples of how cultural diplomacy is applied in Croatia.
I spoke today about the values.
Yeah.
And the values and traditions are quite important for the national identity of all of our nations and states. Simply, at the end of the day, we will forsaken and forget the importance of tradition, culture, art. It's not going to be easy to protect our identity. The identity of my country is European, and it's very much focused and anchored in the culture and tradition of Europe. But we also have our own national identity, tradition. It's very supportive to all of our endeavors to become for example, first of all, independent country, be recognized from the United Nations, be recognized and from the other countries, become the part of European Union and NATO. Now will join Eurozone and Schengen. So it is very much linked to the cultural side. Cultural diplomacy is very important also to bridge some open issues between the regions and between certain countries. A lot of examples about it. So,
Yeah.
and eventually, for us, it was quite important to be successful in UNESCO. So there are 10 sites being protected under protection of UNESCO from the Croatian side, some others in the pipeline. UNESCO is also a cultural organization, but also a very strong political organization. It shows that culture and political side are intertwined and not separable. And I think it is quite important to understand that throughout tradition and preservation of our own culture, we are enhancing, of course, also our political situation. It's without culture, who are all of our nations? So it's quite important that we should bear in mind that even in very difficult situations, in the economical crisis, etc., we should not stop by investing in the culture, promoting the new generation, be very much active in the cultural field.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for your time. It was an honor and a privilege to have you
Pleasure.
here today.
Pleasure.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you.